Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Livingston of Want Leverage Communications, a public relations and LinkedIn consultancy, and I'm back for another episode of PR Patter, where I chat with the amazing people from across my public relations and marketing network. I'm delighted to welcome today Rachel Swanson. Hi, Rachel. Rachel is the owner and lead consultant of Method and Mode. She has 2 decades of experience delivering end-to-end primary research solutions and strategic support to business leaders across industries, both B2B and consumer, qual and quant. From customer satisfaction and personal persona and segmentation work to product development, concept testing, and conjoint, going beyond the numbers to create an insights informed brand narrative is her superpower. I love that. Since 2018, Method and Mode, I'm picturing you with a cape. Method and Mode's insights have fueled early stage businesses and renowned global brands alike across beauty and wellness, fashion, consumer product, consumer packaged goods, tech, hospitality, and media. Before she established Method and Mode, Rachel spent a decade at Condé Nast in brand strategy and insights roles at multiple properties across their brand portfolio. Her foundational expertise in primary methodologies, marketing science and analytics, and usability testing was developed agency wide during stints at Digitas and Possible, which is a WPP agency. So, Rachel, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Julie.
Sure. Could you tell us a little bit more about your backstory and elaborate on
Sure.
your background a bit?
Absolutely. What's maybe rare for being in the research and insight space is I'm a career market researcher. Discovered my love for understanding, that intersection of why people do what they do and stats and just psychology in college, and was able to just hit the ground running from there. I started at a new
Great.
product development firm, actually in college, now defunct, but a small company really focused on product development and launching and testing. Spent a few years there, worked agency side during the post.com boom era. So split testing, usability, analytics was a new thing, but it was all part of kind of the generalist strategy and research practice. Um, did a few years agency side, and like many children of the 80s 90s, loved magazines. Always kind of had in my mind
I'm
that
one of them.
being yeah, the dream of working for a women's fashion magazine was the call. And eventually I was able to leverage my background and years in the industry to move into the corporate research side at Condé Nast. And at the time, it was very heavily focused on editorial research, cover testing, how they were going to move into the digital era. This is, mid early 2000s. The launch of the iPad and what all that meant for these legacy properties. So did a lot of work in that space from a product and content perspective. And then, because I had all these connections across the brands, moved brand side. So spent a couple years as the marketing director at Glamour magazine, and then another few years at W magazine as well. And so the thing that really struck me once I moved to the publishing side after being agency side for a while, and even once I moved brand side, was the way that positioning is really so informed by data and by what your customers think, and whether that's B2B or B2C, right, is understanding what people need and how you're going to deliver against that is just what I find so compelling, personally, and why I love what I do. So once it was time for me to move on during kind of the media upheaval of the late 2010s, I decided to go out on my own and bring my experience from being at very large infrastructure corporations, knowing how critical insights is in the operations, to startups and smaller media brands, and kind of the middle market where there's not necessarily enough resources or structure in place to have a fully dedicated insights team all the time, always on, but there's still an understanding that leadership knows they can't just get by anymore with analytics and with, one survey they did 3 years ago. So that's what I do.
That's great. It's funny that, well, it's just a small world, I guess. I was definitely one of those people who, when I was in college, my goal was to be a fashion editor. And so
Everyone.
yeah, I guess so. I started in that role at YM, which is now
Amazing.
no longer around. But
I remember
later
those days.
later on, I did some freelance work at Brides Magazine when it was a Condé Nast property. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is a small world. The Condé connection is absolutely a small
yeah,
world.
and it was at that time it was so much fun. I mean,
Yeah.
working at a women's magazine was a lot of fun. It was great.
Yeah.
Um, so there seems to be an abundance of data around. So, first of all, I'm always getting asked if I'll participate in surveys and studies. But with so much data around us, why does customer insights matter? And how do you know when the data is really good data
Yeah.
and on target data?
Yeah. So, um, there's no shortage of data, right? And especially, and we can talk about AI more later if we want, or we can avoid it altogether. But really, you know, it's about context, right? And so you can have so much data, but it's what you do with it and how you leverage it that matters. It's not, what you know, but what you notice. It's the patterns, it's implications, and it's how you put that, into practice in your business, right? And so, there's the piece of the puzzle that, I think is super important that leaders not fail to bring to the table is actually talking to customers. And whether that's, customer experience and, reviews and service calls, that's great. But really diving into kind of the unarticulated needs or kind of the latent problems, that your product, brand, or position is solving is really, so critical, because you're never going to get the why from analytics.
Right. I'm sorry. I'm having some camera issues. Here I
Oh, no
am.
worries.
Okay. It's interesting. Many years ago, when I was at Liz Claiborne, at the time was the largest garment manufacturer in the world, probably. We were developing a new line of fashion accessories, of fashion jewelry, and we worked with one of the world's leading designers, Ivan Chermayeff at the time. He's no longer with us, but Chermayeff and Geismar is a world-renowned logo and corporate identity firm. And we did not use customer insights. I mean, we used anecdotal information, which was valuable to a point, but I remember so clearly how we didn't invest in doing the real, properly executed research, and we came up with um, a logo and with merchandising that was in a color that was totally disruptive at the time to department store setup on the first floor of the department store, and it did not perform well. So I'll never forget, if we had invested in actual, customer insights research, we might have come out on the other end.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's three things that I really love insights work for. It's about connection, with your customers, and that requires the human element, the human touch, right? It's about those unexpected or incident, those unexpected insights, those moments of serendipity, which really are
Yeah,
so critical with innovation. And it's also about observed or nonverbal or more psychographic cues that kind of let you know if you're on pace or not, right? So in my business, the way that, how I kind of translate this down, and out of just saying, well, just do a survey. It's not about doing a survey. It's about how can we make a more confident business decision, and how can we invest smartly, because no one has research budgets like they had, a decade ago, 2 decades ago. It's just not the same, right? It has to ladder into ROI, and there has to be a real, strategic imperative that what we're learning is helping a decision, or making sure that we're pivoting, and if we're pivoting in the right direction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you give us some examples of some of the programs that you've worked on?
Yeah. So, I work a lot in, I work, a lot in consumer products, in terms of product innovation, developing digital products as well, such as loyalty programs, or even just, new websites or, frameworks for social content. Um, but also, product side, something that stands out recently is I was working with a wellness tech company, to understand a few of their different SKUs. And they decided lately to actually incorporate in our in-person testing with, true prospects, some of the competitive products. And they'd never really done that kind of side-by-side comparison in a systematic way before, to see really small nuances in the product design and the hand feel that just had not really been thought of before. Because when they were always comparing their internal product selection, what was in their portfolio, they were making incremental changes there, right, to suit different use cases
Right.
of this product. So that was like a really exciting finding, for my client and for me, is that, again, they never would have uncovered that, um, in that case. But more straightforward from a more quantitative perspective, concept testing. I recently had a client in the kind of consumer entertainment hospitality space. They have a new concept that has a couple locations in market. It's kind of in the same vein as, maybe an indoor mini golf, or a, not really an arcade, but kind of, some
Right.
of these more interactive, immersive, in-person entertainment experiences. And, just going to market and talking about the concept, showing the brand video, just getting some numbers behind, the different markets that they're considering launching in, and what people really loved about, the framework of becoming a customer, what that guest experience looked like. Just getting some numbers on the table, as they expand, that not only helps with internal, stakeholders and investor positioning, but also when you go to market, how the customer, making sure that you're using what resonates with customers. Because again, it's about that human element. And I think we've all been in the situation where we know something looks good on paper, or now we could say, like, looks
Yeah.
good digitally,
Right.
feels like it should hit, but it just, something feels off. And the what feels off is the human piece.
And how important is it to revisit that research on a regular basis? Because customers change their attitudes and the experience can
Sure.
change. Well, when the experience has been out there for a while, right? People are not, may not be as excited as they were initially. How do you monitor that?
Sure. I mean, look, it's always amazing to be able to kind of track or trend what you're seeing so that you can make incremental change. But, the reality is that's very challenging for a lot of businesses, unless they're going with a very tightly scripted, productized kind of research approach, right? So, what I do is more custom, right? Because there's always a lot of nuance, there's more nuance that you want to see, or maybe you think you're tracking something versus last year, but you're actually wanting to ask like these 20 other questions instead. So, my perspective is to do, as much as you can when you can. Um, and, try to avoid the kitchen sink model by, planning out a little bit in advance, and looking at your year, looking at your priorities. And even if it's a smaller investment, where is that investment going to move the needle?
Great. Um, how do you everybody wants to leverage their customer insights, their market research to do something even higher than that, right? To really spread the word about a particular brand and elevate it. So, for example, leveraging that data into thought leadership pieces, speaking engagements, crisis public relations, and even a sales lead magnet. How do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something I love doing as well, right? So we've talked about product development, concept testing. I love it all. But, thought leadership, I think what's so unique, or what's really important in that space, is being differentiated, right? And a really kind of easy way to be differentiated is to bring something proprietary to the table, and having your own data, your own hypotheses that you've brought to life with solid backing, Whether that's, doing some ethnography with the kind of audience you're talking about, or running a survey to have those visualizations and charts that you just really know are going to make your presentation sing, that's really powerful. I've done this a fair amount with some digital agency clients, where you'd think, well, why would a digital agency need an insights consultant to come in and run research when they must have their own? Well, they have their own to service clients. They don't have their own to market themselves.
Right.
And that's what's going to fall to the back burner unless they pull someone in who cannot be focusing on the client work and billing those
Well,
hours.
and you bring a fresh perspective.
And
You're
bring a
coming
fresh
from the outside.
perspective. Exactly. So, doing that just really up levels it. It makes it more special, and it makes it something you can own, right? Like no one really needs you to take an e-marketer report and repackage it in your branding. That can be great, but it's not going to add value and show what new you're bringing to the table and how you're differentiated. From, as you mentioned, like the crisis PR or the comms perspective, setting the narrative, right? We've all been in those positions where something hits your industry and there's a new hot topic, and you've got to get out ahead, or you've got to chime in about the position. And I've done this in kind of the workplace security space, actually, where kind of the concept of frontline workers and how physically safe retail frontline healthcare workers are, in the post-COVID and now the post-COVID era, when everyone focuses on data security, right? Like, what about how people are being treated by customers and guests, by fellow employees, by sometimes management? That's still a big issue in a lot of spaces. So I worked with a client there to kind of, and worked with their PR team to kind of, craft the story at the moment where there was a lot of news in the space, and really just map their talking points to some fresh data that we gathered on a very broad scale quantitative survey to bring to life some of the issues, and their perspective on the issues, and obviously then how the product, how the organization can kind of satisfy those needs. And then again, like as with the thought leadership for lead gen, I've worked with some SaaS companies, different types of software in the e-commerce space, and people are always looking for those quick tips. And what's going on in my industry? Am I still competitive? Right? It's like the imposter syndrome creeps up, or
Right.
you're at your organization and you have a roadmap, and you're like, oh my god, but what is everyone else doing? That's a great time to do, especially with B2B, some categories, some competitive analysis, some stakeholder interviews or one-on-one interviews with folks in the space, and really distill down what's happening, and see if you're, and put out a paper on, how competitive, what's going on in the market, and how your organization solves those concerns for people who are in the space, reconsidering their approach. And so those are, kind of more, again, that's more about the branding. It's more about the positioning. It's not, saying, this color is what works, or these people are going to buy, or this is the pricing structure. But it's that softer, data-driven, insights-driven positioning that helps sell in what you're offering, and that's always really fun to do.
So really, I think what you're saying is to really keep on top of the life cycle of the product or service and continue to um, dip back into customer insights to make sure that you're continually on target.
Yeah, and it's your customers, and it's also prospects, right? So it's understanding the marketplace and your prospective customers, and those who are not your customers, and why they aren't. You're not going to get that from your site analytics and from your social.
Right, absolutely. Um, so how do you pick the right customer insights partner? Because
Yeah,
I think for some companies, whether they're B2B or B2C, this is a big deal for them.
sure.
Find the right partner. You want to work with somebody you can trust. What are some of the things you should look for?
Sure. I think number one is someone who's really going to hear your problems, um,
So
and
good listeners.
a good listener. Yeah, I've found that the best researchers are quite good listeners. There's kind of a maxim on the qual side where the best moderators never speak, because you want to be hearing what people are saying, right? And you want to be able to deduce what people are saying even when they're not saying it, right?
Right.
So I think, I guess I would flip that into red flags for me are, multiple form submissions, multiple hoops to jump through to get to to get to a call with someone who can actually answer questions about your project and how it'll work. Um, I think, look, there are definitely times when working with a big firm or, a mid-sized firm that has, kind of an expertise in a certain research product is beneficial and cost effective. I find sometimes clients get frustrated though when they want to pivot and add a few different things in to customize it, and then they're going to be nickel and dimed for, adding or changing the process, right? So I think that's something to look for or be honest with yourself about, of if you know that you just need like a very tight concept test, you don't want custom questions, you want to work with a team that's going to crank it out, you need it
Sure.
in 4 days, like great. Large platforms that just give you the report and point to the end result, that'll work. But if you're really interested in some more nuanced questions and deeper understanding and flexibility with your data and the instrument, you're going to want to work with someone that's more nimble and customized. I think as well. Again, it's more about being honest with your organization and what your capabilities are.
Right.
Do you have someone who can look at the data and synthesize it or not? Do you want to work with someone who's senior and been hands-on hundreds of projects, or do you want someone, do you want to have that trade-off with someone who's more junior who might not understand the scope of your business or how that data is getting used by you as the end client, right? And so that's, something that I, like to think that I bring to the table as well, is when you're working with more senior partners, and they're the ones doing the work and closely overseeing the work, they're going to have a better understanding of your business
Yeah.
and your business position in the world, versus if it's being passed off to someone who's kind of siloed into, a specific piece of that puzzle, right? So, just really kind of, being honest with yourself, what your organization can support resource wise, what your organization can support budget wise, and really what your questions are that you want to answer. And if they are something that's really straightforward, yes, no, couple data points, or if you're looking for more nuance, and
Right. Right.
who can deliver that to you and who you feel has that value. There's also a lot of subject matter expertise, partners that focus in specific areas, especially if you're looking B2B versus consumer. I think, again, that matters more at the enterprise level, right? I think, most career researchers and people who've been in the industry 10 or more years have worked for a variety of clients across sectors and across different, reaching different audiences. And so the fundamental skills of research are transferable. And what makes work exciting for people who've been in the business a long time is actually learning new businesses and new categories as they go and applying those skills in that space. So obviously, again, it's about what you really need. If you need benchmarks in your space, absolutely go with someone who productizes and specializes in your sector. But if you're really just looking for understanding your customers or thinking outside the box, generally like a smaller, more custom shop is going to be a better fit for you.
So, okay, so you've made the decision to go forward with it with an agency. How do you begin a successful customer insights project? Are there steps
Sure.
that you should take or that you
Sure.
should look for to know that, oh yeah, these are kind of the right ways to go?
Sure. So, this is kind of my, I have a variety of versions of this, but it's like, I call it the three questions I always ask. Whenever I'm talking to a new potential partner or starting a new project, even with an existing partner, what are the objectives? Because I can tell you that if you cannot articulate what it is you want to learn, it is going to be a much more challenging process for us to figure out the right approach, make sure
Sure.
the instrument that we use is the right one, and for you to feel the project successful. So really pushing on your hypotheses, articulating what it is you want to define, knowing what a successful research project, insights project looks like, um, you know, kind of pushing it to the furthest you can at the beginning is going to pay off immensely, right? Garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know what you want to do, take that time to really lay it out. And if you don't know how to articulate, that's fine. That's what people like me help you do,
Right.
right? But you have to be able to articulate what the need is for doing the research, right? So articulating objectives and hypothesis critical.
Now,
Then,
with your partner though, would they help? Can
yeah.
they help you articulate what you think you need?
Yeah, I think I want to understand the outcome, right? What are they trying to solve? What is the
Yeah.
problem?
Yeah.
And if you don't know what the problem is, I can't help you determine for your business what the priority problem is, right? From no knowledge, right? So just being super, clear. The more info we can share, the better. The understanding what is that pain point, or the objective, um, of doing research and doing research now. Um,
Okay.
Not just the idea of, I guess the flip side is sometimes there could be a leadership, mandate that says we got to do some research. That's not a helpful way to start a project. It
No,
doesn't
no,
have to
not
be,
at all.
a robust thesis, written out on 5 pages, but there has to be some priorities, some hierarchy of what the needs are or what the key questions are that we're trying to solve. The second thing is really, identify your audience, not who you want to talk to. Well, I can help you figure out that we're talking to the right person, but who cares about what you're trying to solve? So once you've laid out those questions you need answered, who cares about those answers? Truly, is it this group of management? Is it your product development team? Is it communications and PR? Is it the marketing team? Who really cares about those results? And bringing them into the tent early on goes very far. Whether that's, that might not be the kickoff with myself or someone like me, but during the survey development process, during the review of a discussion guide, having them sit in on a focus group, in the back room, or if it's on Zoom, having them chime in, having them, building consensus with the people who care is going to make the research better. And then the third thing is that's kind of along with that is how do they receive feedback? So even when you're thinking about the project scope, and this is something that I've been exploring a lot over the past few years with clients, is I don't always do a big presentation deck at the end of my work with folks, because no one wants to
Interesting.
read it. No one wants a 50-page deck. Unless you're in the type of organization where the optics of having that artifact of a 50-page deck
Right.
matter, which certain
Right.
industries, of course, they always will. Other organizations, I've had a 90-minute work session and a 10 bullet points, and we've talked about it and we've played with the data together and they're ready to go. I've had clients where they've made decisions on the phone call and then like gone into a new meeting to change a direction of marketing copy and just to go test it. Like, let's go throw this in and test this now. So it really, again, it's really about what I've found over the years is that being honest with yourself about what your organization can do and what your organization needs is the best way to start with a project. It also goes into the platforms you choose, right? So even if you have in-house insights, right, and you have an analyst or a small team of researchers, um, you know I'm sure they always are looking at the different tools to field surveys or the different platforms for social listening. You have to be trained on a platform. Having the platform
Right.
doesn't mean the insights are better. And if you don't know how to use the platform, it doesn't make them less expensive either, because then you're paying for the ability, but you're not leveraging it to the fullest, right? So setting objectives, knowing who cares about your results, and making sure the people who care about the results are receiving them in the right way, whether that's top lines, phone calls, doing a video attached to an email, a one sheet, or a huge, robust research deck. That's really, really where I focus. And again, where it's a lever where you can right size partnerships based on what you need, and you're not, paying for a paperweight to be at your desk at the end of a 6-week research project.
Right. Right.
Or I
That's
should say
great
the PDF.
information,
I should say the
Rachel.
PDF that never gets
Right.
opened, that's in your inbox, that you
Right.
have to,
Right.
then gives you stress about, oh, I got to figure out what this says. No one wants to figure out what the report says. And
No, not at
that's
all.
again,
Not at
that's what
all.
making sure that you're working with a partner who hears you, hears what you need, and hears what your organization's capable of actually leveraging is so important.
Rachel, this has been such a comprehensive discussion. I'm so glad you came on. How can people get in touch with you?
Sure.
Is it on LinkedIn or on your website?
Sure.
What do you
I'm
prefer?
on LinkedIn. It's Rachel Swanson. Methodandmode.co is my website. I have a bunch of case studies there. You can see my work. Um, Always happy to have an introductory call and talk about your business. And happy to help.
Wonderful. Everyone else, if you like what you saw today, I hope you'll go to my website at wantleverage.com and download our free tip sheet, How to Make Your C-Suite Stand Out on LinkedIn. We're experts in raising executive visibility on the LinkedIn platform, but also in extending your thought leadership to other platforms as well to get you noticed and to make you shine against your competitors. Rachel, great to have you again. And everyone else,